It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. We begin in one of the most intimate spaces in American democracy, the voting booth. Usually a school gymnasium, a church fellowship room, a fire station. It's quiet and quick, and it's supposed to be equal. But for people with disabilities, the door is often closed. A new report documents just how often and why it keeps getting worse. 1 in 4 Americans has a disability. In Michigan, that number is nearly 1 in 3. And yet, this new report finds that only 10% of the polling places assessed in 2025 were fully accessible. That's down from 13% the year before and 16% the year before that. In other words, every year, the number goes in the wrong direction. Detroit Disability Power has now audited more than 1,000 polling places across Metro Detroit. Trained volunteers have visited precincts during early voting, primaries, and on Election Day with a checklist and a mission. Make sure the law is being followed. Eric Welsby is the advocacy director at Detroit Disability Power. He serves on the Michigan Bureau of Elections Voting System Advisory Committee for Accessible Elections and was recently appointed by Governor Whitmer to the Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. Bakpak Durden is a Detroit-born artist, disability advocate, and one of the people who actually shows up to do the audits at roughly 100 polling sites and counting. Eric, Bakpak, welcome.
Hi.
Thanks. And the phone lines are open, 313-577-1019. We want to know how you're feeling about voting this year. Are you concerned about accessibility, about election security? Eric, I want to begin with you. The Detroit Disability Power Report audited over 400 Election Day polling locations across dozens of jurisdictions. I'm wondering, what's the single finding that you want to highlight?
So the big takeaway is on our Election Day sites, we're finding only 10% of them are actually fully accessible. That means that it has the 4 main categories. Does it have accessible parking and pathways? Does it have an accessible entrance? Does it have the voter assist terminal, which is what we call our accessible voting device here in Michigan? Is that set up, ready to go, ready to be used, have all of its equipment? And is there a wheelchair height voting booth for filling out a paper ballot? Are all of those things there? Could a person with any number of disabilities get into that site and cast their ballot? And again, we're finding only 10% sites are complying in all of those areas.
Okay, and what really struck me, Eric, was that this number is going down, that in your previous report, it was 13% of polling sites. And in the report before that, it was 16% of polling sites. So my question to you is, why does voting for people with disabilities keep getting worse?
So this is it's a systems problem. Michigan is a complex state, which actually has a lot of great advantages for election integrity and knowing that, our vote is counted locally by local people. So we know that it's accurate. But that complexity, having over 1,500 separate jurisdictions overseeing elections, means that there's 1,500 people training election workers, making sure polling locations are set up, having that standardized and having everybody, fully educated on all aspects of the disability part of this, recognizing they have to do all the other parts. They have to make sure the poll book is there. They have to get those sites. It's a lot. It's overwhelming, and not every clerk has the support they need. Also, as we go on in time, some of the sites that we may visit in the past that had infrastructure problems have now been through a couple more Michigan winners. So parking lot sidewalks that maybe had a small problem, they become bigger, right? I drove through some construction to get here.
Yeah.
So some of it is just time. If those things aren't fixed, they're going to get worse.
I'm wondering, do you think that because election clerks have put such a big focus on election security that it has been at the cost, perhaps, of election accessibility?
I don't think so. I mean, the issues are separate in a lot of ways, and I think having an
Sure.
accessible election is actually in some ways good for security because it means public observers and things like that can get in and can watch that process and make sure it's being done correctly.
Okay, one more thing to you, Eric, before we bring Bakpak into the conversation. The report found that the VAT, that's the voter assist terminal, the machine that allows blind and low vision voters and others to cast their ballot privately, was the single biggest failure point. Only 36% of sites had a fully accessible voter assist terminal. I want you to explain what that actually means for a voter who needs it.
So, we have this machine that does a lot of great things. It's touch screen, right? And then it prints out a ballot. So if you're blind, there's a controller. You can have your ballot read to you and fill it out using the controller, right? It does all these great things. And so having those headphones there and plugged in, having that controller there and plugged in is important. But also, the machine needs to be set up in a way where it's a screen. It's pretty visible. If that screen is facing the room, other people can likely see how you're casting your vote, which is a violation of your right to a private ballot. If the vat's put off in a corner near a wall, it might not be far enough out that a wheelchair user could navigate behind it and get situated to use it. All right, there's cords. Cords across the room, right, create trip hazards and other hazards for people that use mobility devices. There's a lot of things that go into making sure that a disabled person can get to that machine, position themselves, and then use it in the way that they need to use it to successfully vote.
Eric, these findings are frustrating, and I think they are not only frustrating for disability advocates, they're of course very frustrating for folks inside the disability community. Bakpak, I want to turn to you because you've personally walked into roughly 100 of these sites. Before we get deeper into the numbers, what does it actually feel like to walk into a polling place and start your audit? What are you looking for, let's say, the moment you arrive?
Well, the moment I arrive, I park and I assess the parking lot to see if there's signage or clearly marked parking spaces, and also if curbside voting is available. And then also I have to see if there's any kind of agitators or anything going on outside, because that will deter people from voting. And then if the walkways and doorways are clear, and if the doors open, if they're light enough, if there's an accessible route to get in. And then once I'm inside, I see if there's wheelchair height voting booths, the VAT set up, if there's privacy involved in all that, and I think that's pretty much it.
So I got to tell you that the work that you all are doing has really opened my eyes to accessibility issues. And the last time I went to vote, I was doing my own little audit. And I must say, I saw a lot of problems. I was looking at just even accessing the door, and there was a step up. It looked difficult, like it took me a little while to find an elevator. Talk a little bit more, if you would, Bakpak, about what signals in the first moments of arrival tell you whether someone thought about disabled voters when they set up the space.
From the parking lot itself, if you don't see the signage, or if the signage is confusing, then that's an automatic difficulty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes in the packets that the clerks receive, there's accessible signage, but it's the directional nature of it is opposite of where the entry is.
At the polling site that I went to last time, and this was in downtown Detroit, where we all know there are many one-way streets, I drove around this site multiple times trying to find where I was supposed to park because it was lacking signage. Please go on.
But also, it's important to remember that accessibility is for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you don't have a disability or you don't identify as someone with a disability, having clear signage is beneficial to you as well.
Could you think about a specific moment from your audits, something you saw or a conversation you had that's really stayed with you?
I think the coolest ones are when the chair people are like, how can I fix this right now? And then I'm like, oh, cool. We can change this table. We can think about turning this to ensure privacy. We can set up the wheelchair height voting booth right now.
So it's when clerks and the staff are really amenable, excuse me, when they're open to making changes in the moment, when they seem cognizant, when they seem like they truly do care about that accessibility. How often is that happening versus, let's say, someone feeling like they're caught off guard?
If I were to put a number on it, I'd say like 7%.
Wait, 7% are caught off guard, or 7% are amenable to changing?
But I also just made the number up.
Okay, well, we are a fact-based program here, so I want like a more accurate assessment from you. What do you think?
I feel like, of recent memory, at least 2 times the last audit, it happened where people asked how they could change something. And sometimes people ask and then they don't because they're too busy, but they think about it and they're like, we'll get on that. Or there was one time one of the chair people was a wheelchair user and they were like, oh, wait, I didn't think about this. Let's change this right now. And I'm like, absolutely, let's do it.
So you've had some positive conversations then, because after you finish an audit, you're talking to the precinct chairperson, you're telling them what you found. It's not just the folks you're talking to at the site, but you're talking to people afterwards, and they have been open. You're giving me a look, Bakpak, like kind of yes.
Well, there's legal parts to all this because I'm credentialed as a challenger, so I'm not actually allowed to talk to anybody inside the precinct or even outside of it, really. I can only speak with the chairperson, and they can relay messages to everybody else.
Got it. Okay. So when we're talking about these conversations that you're having with folks, it is solely with the chairperson.
Yes.
Got it. It's not with one of the poll workers.
No.
Okay. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guests are Eric Welsby and Bakpak Durden from Detroit Disability Power. We're discussing a new report on polling place accessibility in Michigan. Here's the headline. Only 10% of the polling locations they assessed in 2025 met basic legal standards. Now, that's down from 13% the year before and 16% the year before that. But the report also says many of the fixes require no new laws, no new budgets. We're going to get to that. But first, Bakpak, you're a disability advocate. You're an artist. You're a person who's lived inside this community. Why do you do this work?
Like I said before, accessibility is for everyone. If you can't show up because something is not accessible, then you can't show up for your community or for yourself. So I feel like it's important to put that at the forefront.
What does it feel like to belong to a community that's routinely treated as an afterthought, to show up somewhere legally required to include you and find that nobody prepared for you to come?
It's frustrating, but not surprising, you know?
Say more.
I mean, the systems that are in place aren't often thinking about how it can benefit the largest amount of people, but how it can work to benefit the people who have the most money. So I feel like if we all come together, the people who are advocating for ourselves and for our community, then we are the majority and we can put more systems in place that benefit us.
Have you noticed changes in recent years? Do you feel that there is more of a desire from folks to fight for access for people with disabilities? Because as you have noted, accessibility is an issue for everyone.
Yeah, I feel like more, I would say venues, event spaces, art galleries, because that's where I'm at most of the time, are considering that beforehand. And if they fall short, they are making changes because they want to make their spaces more amenable to more people within the community.
Now, this new report by Detroit Disability Power, it's been under embargo. So we've yet to discuss these findings with local election officials. Eric, you've done this work for years and you've had plenty of conversations with clerks and officials along the way. What has that engagement looked like? I mean, Bakpak and I are talking about how, more broadly speaking, people are amenable to making changes. What do officials typically say when you bring this data to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's complex. Again, there's a lot of clerks. I mean, and we're only touching a small percentage of that with the number of communities we're currently able to do. But we do have clerks that, after we get the observations completed, we compile that data, and the clerks actually get it 5 or 6 weeks later. So if they have another election coming up, they might be able to make some simple improvements before that. And we have some clerks that they get that, and we never hear anything from. Some reach out and ask very specific questions about, like, hey, your observers noted that there was this issue. Like, can you talk through it? Do you have any more information? But really, like, who's going to do that is a real question, because we're working with a lot of clerks, and clerks have big jobs. I do find that the vast majority of clerks, the vast majority of election workers, like, have good intentions, right? They want to do good, they want to do right by this, but there's competing priorities. I
mean, yes, the report is careful to say this isn't about blaming individual clerks. I wonder, why isn't this work, though, simply happening within election departments? In other words, why aren't there disability advocates within all voting departments that do the changes that you suggest on site?
I think some of it is staff. I mean, obviously, bigger cities, Detroit and others, have larger departments, but some of the communities we're going to are very small. And the elections department is actually the clerk's office, which might be the clerk and 1 or 2 other employees doing all the work that clerks do outside of elections as well. And so, it can be hard. Now, we do encourage them, like, invite in disabled members of your community, have them advise, have them do walkthroughs of your sites, right? Like whatever works for you. I mean, again, we have some clerks that are finding new ways. Other clerks we're having some struggles with.
The report says 22% of inaccessible sites failed on only one thing. So this makes sense to me as to why you want to keep some level of harmony with a lot of these clerks, with a lot of these departments, because it's like, gosh, you guys are kind of close. To that end, though, if that one thing were fixed at every one of those sites, fully accessible locations would more than triple. So my question to you, Eric, what is the one thing that keeps getting missed, and why?
I mean, I think the VAT is the biggest thing. It's intimidating, right? It's this device that...
This is the voter assist terminal,
yeah,
which is a paper-based, user-friendly, fully ADA compliant system that's available for anyone to use at a polling location in Michigan. Go on.
Yes, absolutely. And so it can be intimidating. However, I find that when I can get election workers or clerks to sit down and use that machine as a voter in, like, a mock election or something, like, that light bulb goes off. They have that aha moment, like, oh, this actually isn't as intimidating or as scary as it is. I've had election workers tell me, like, now that I've used it, I get it. I actually think I might benefit from it and use it. I'm going to talk to the voters coming, as I'm checking them in, and let them know this option exists. They could have always done that, but because of fear of technology, lack of familiarity. If we can get election workers and clerks more familiar with this machine and how it actually works, they will sell it to voters and tell them, like, this is an option. If you think it might help you or you might enjoy voting this way, like, we can do that. And they'll be better prepared to provide assistance and people navigating, because voters can also be nervous. They're used to voting on paper, even if it's challenging. Transitioning voters, it takes a little courage, right? It takes courage for voters to try something new, but we need election workers to really be well equipped to support them in that courageous act of voting maybe slightly differently in order to make it easier and more comfortable for them. But in the long term, like, that's good. We know, I've talked to some of our members who vote absentee currently, not because they want to, but because they've had such bad experiences as disabled voters going to polling locations.
Well, in other words, voting should not have to be an act of courage. It should be something that is simple and easy to do. And on that note, I want each of you to finish this sentence for me to close things out. A fully accessible polling place would mean. Bakpak?
No.
Eric first.
I mean, every voter is able to show up and know that they were able to easily cast their ballot and go home.
Same.
Eric Welsby is the advocacy director at Detroit Disability Power. Bakpak Durden is a Detroit artist and audit volunteer with the organization. We'll link to their brand new 2025 polling place accessibility report at WDET.org. Eric, Bakpak, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Up next, fewer people are confident about the security of our voting systems. We've just been talking about accessibility, but security is a huge part as well. We'll talk to a county clerk in West Michigan about his job and why he thinks trust is declining. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.